Right. Today let us discuss about the 16th December 2015 newspaper. The first article is related to the Tapi pipeline, and editorial talks about the advantages India can have. The Tapi pipeline stands for Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. Once it is completed, it is expected to transfer more than 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. So all the stakeholders that go Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India have their distinctive advantages. Now the Turkmenistan, it has a major source of energy market only towards China. So it wants to diversify its energy resources. Being a landlocked country, it has to depend only upon the pipelines. So it provides for a new market in the energy starving South Asia. So in this context already, the China is sourcing 50% of its energy needs from Central Asia, and recently it also signed $400 billion China-Russia gas agreement. So in this context, India cannot be left behind. So in the present gas pipeline, the 42% for India and Pakistan, and remaining 16% will go to the Afghanistan. And this 42% is expected to meet one-third of the energy demand for India. So which is going to be huge. And next is Afghanistan. It is majorly dependent on foreign aid as of now. The Tapi pipeline will provide for more than $600 million as a transit fee, which can be used for the development. But however, the major challenge for this is the security across the Durand line. So it goes for the very sensitive regions both in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And if pipeline comes into action, so it shows a close coordination between Central Asia and South Asia. And also it can re-engage the dialogue between these countries, that is between Pakistan and Afghanistan, India and Afghanistan. So it can provide for a sustainable, cooperative, peace and stable Asia, especially South Asia and Central Asia. And it is also in the interest of the America, because America has really lobbied for this particular pipeline. And on the other hand, with the decreasing energy prices, the Turkmenistan president Gurbanguly is also actively sought for this particular pipeline. So the pipeline can be called as pipeline of peace. The next is the developmental achievements of India till date. Now if you talk about this, between 2000 to 2014, in this 1.5 decade, India has achieved a remarkable developmental progress. It made India into the middle income groups. So one is in the gross national income rise, and other one is with regard to the health care. So in the last week there is India Health Report or India Health Report Nutrition 2015. What it states is the stunting in India has decreased remarkably. So this is a remarkable achievement. In spite of this, there are interstate variabilities. The Uttar Pradesh and Bihar facing the highest amount of stunting, and the rich states are drastically decreasing on this stunting. So this interstate variability is one thing which we need to fight now. And the Human Development Report 2014, it has also took a positive view towards the India's development. But however, the inequality is squarely exposed. India was pulled down because of this inequality. So once inequality adjusted, it is going to fall down by more than 30 ranks. That shows the dismal status of performance on women front. The women mostly, they are in the unpaid care work in the managing the families, and their labor participation rate is decreasing. And added to this, the healthcare deliverables, they are not very favorable to the women. And the most remarkable inequality exists in the education field, where a woman, only half of the educational years compared to the men are attained by the women. So if we consider education as a leveler of any inequality, then on the most important front over here, we are not performing well. In this context, the workforce and their protection is also decreasing. So the social safety nets which are available for the workforce are the lowest in the world. So it means So we have achieved remarkably, and there is a lot to achieve for India, especially on the developmental front, that is on the education front. So this is about the reports talk about. So coming to the urbanization in India, this article is the most beautiful today. Now if you observe, there are two important things we need to understand. One is a mega city centered growth, and the second is a distributed networked cities or networked urbanization. The entire developmental agenda, it is centered around the urbanization as a solution for the growth of the economy. But if you take about various reports, the UN Habitat report, what it says is 2/3 of the population by 2050 they are going to live in the urban areas. The next is the networked urbanization. So in India, the commercial activity, administrative activity, etc., all these are centered around one mega city. Now this situation is much worse in China. Now slowly China is also moving towards this networked urbanization. If you see in Beijing, now it is going to become a city which is bigger than the South Korea itself, with the neighboring Tianjin province together. So it means that this mega city urbanization is going to increase the cost of urbanization and vulnerability. So what it recommends is we can create the regional centers of the administration where a district collector will be reporting to these regional administrators, which will decrease the movement of the people towards the capital. And the next thing is the two capital model may not be necessary if slowly we decentralize the industrialization and commercialization activity, developing the clusters in the secondary cities. These need to be planned for. Now, coming to the next article, the panchayats must not be elitist. So understand the recent Haryana judgment or Haryana Panchayat Act and the judgment of the Supreme Court, it has been criticized in this article. So we need to see the panchayats from the perspective of constitutional empowerment of the weak and marginalized. It means we shall provide them greater access to contest in the panchayat elections rather than limiting their own contributions towards the rural governance. So in this context, if you compare the constitutional debate on prescribing the educational qualifications for various constitutional positions, this improving the representative character and non-exclusion of certain disadvantaged sections from representation, no such educational qualifications are prescribed. And the second is, if we observe Article 171 of the Constitution, that provides for the elections to the legislative councils, it prescribes for so-called as qualifications for the people who has to vote for graduate constituencies, but not to the person who has to represent them. So it is up to the voters to choose the person representing them is appropriate or not. Unnecessary imposition of various qualifications by the legislature or by the parliament is going to limit the representative choices towards the people. Now if we observe many of the statesmen in India and many of the chief ministers who ruled Tamil Nadu and achieved remarkable success, these are actually did not pass the matriculation. So in this context, education and wisdom, they cannot be seen as a continuum of each other. So in this context, if the Haryana Panchayat law, the educational qualifications are imposed, almost 68% of the women and 41% of the scheduled caste men, they are excluded from contesting the elections. So it's going to bring in or enlarge the elitist orientation towards the Panchayat elections in India. So in this context, we have to see the panchayats as the source of the empowerment of the people, just as the organizations or bodies which are representative. So if we see in the larger perspective, we shall not diminish the representative choices for the electorate. That is what is the argument. And next is about Paris Agreement. What India has to gain from the Paris Agreement. Now, in the long run, if we see, the climate change mitigation is going to decrease the India's risk or susceptibility for the climate change vagaries or dangers of the climate change. So every country benefits from the decrease in collective exposure to these emission of the greenhouse gases. And India is going to benefit much because its vulnerability is very high, being a tropical and has a huge coast. And on the second thing, on the direct agreements that have come up in the past, India can reserve its space to fulfill its energy needs. So on the mitigation front, there is a peaking year which the West was stressing on, but however no peaking year was mentioned. The China though gave the 2030 as a peaking year, no such an year was given by India. So India has a flexibility to determine its peaking year based on the changes in technology and emission reductions which it is going to achieve soon. And India's argument is about not reduction of the emissions directly, but a reduction of the energy intensity. It means emission intensity. It means the amount of the emissions it is going to release for unit of growth. So the emission intensity was agreed, and on the other hand, the differentiation principle, though diluted from Kyoto Protocol to now, it's still working. So the direct emission cuts were prescribed for the developed countries and advised for them, but the developing countries such as India, the economy-wide emission cuts were not being prescribed and energy intensity is accepted. Added to this, there is a 5-year verifiable mechanism and the technological review process and stock taking situation, which will ensure that the countries follow their nationally determined contributions. It means the climate change mitigation is going to take forward. The second thing on the financial front, the West agreed for $100 billion, mostly coming from the public funds, and greater transparency into this. As India is most vulnerable, and if it has to decrease its emissions, it has to get greater support from the developed nations. Obviously, India will be major beneficiary from these fund transfers. But however, what India has to do? So India cannot support in energy inefficiencies for longer. So the ad hoc, uncoordinated energy policy and planning has to be done away with, and we have to keep a systematic policy in place. And added to this, India also shall develop its capacities to review the INDCs given by different countries, especially developed countries, to put forward its strong arguments towards the climate change mitigation. So these are the important things this article talks about. Now, warnings from the France. Now recently, let us know something about the France establishment. Recently, there are elections for the regional councils in France. So in elections of the France, there are 2 rounds. So in the first round, the far-right party, which talks about the xenophobic or that is Semitic language, has appeared to be winning the elections with the lead in 5 to 6 provinces. But however, in the second round, it did not even win one of the provinces. The Front National of Maria Le Pen did not show any remarkable success in these elections. So first of all, why the people tried to move towards the right wing? So whenever a country is going through a distress, so the terrorist attack in the France, growing unemployment rates, and also immigration crisis, these 3 things have given impetus to the right wing. So it means a systemic questions are posed for the traditional left wing in the country, or socialistic parties in the country. Even the second round, the center right is able to win the elections. The Sarkozy's party is able to win the election, as left withdrew from the elections to avoid the right from coming into power. So it is a warning sign for the entire Europe. So, but however, it is also overhyped by the media, the growth of the right in the France. If you compare the left, which was very much strong, that is between 1940 to 45 to 70, that is French Communist Party, It had a systemic support in the society. It has the cultural organizations created. Also, left has its own ideology, etc. But today's far right of Front National, other than electoral role, they do not have any other existence. So that's why the Front National cannot be an immediate threat. But however, people lineage or inclination towards the front right, the front national front shows some threat. So in this context, the revisiting of policy, that is distancing the people from the center right and center left, has to be revisited in the France. That's what is the article argues about. And coming to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India and Pakistan, they are about to join as the permanent members over here. So in this summit, the important issues raised were the General V.K. Singh, representing India, said that there can be no good terrorists and bad terrorists. Probably he is keeping in mind the recent engagement between the Taliban leaders and Afghanistan government, where the Talibans are good Talibans and Afghanistan government. So there is nothing called good and bad among the terrorists, which was proven by the recent attacks in France, and also this shoot down of the Russian airline, a Russian aeroplane in the Egypt. And the second thing is, India has clearly expressed its position with regard to Afghanistan. We wanted to have a stable and peaceful Afghanistan, free of external interference, which has to be stable, prosperous, and contribute to the regional peace too. That is what is the stand of India to the Afghanistan. So it means India is avoiding, or India has explicitly said that it is not in support of ongoing China-mediated peace process in the Afghanistan, or dialogue between the Afghanistan Taliban, who are said to be good Taliban, and the Pakistan. And India also opposed the China-Pakistan economic corridor, especially that is Gwadar to Kashgar, because it is going through the POK and India has its sovereign concerns over there. And Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, he has expressed again, tried to play his country's strategic importance, because it is at the convergence of Central Asia, South Asia, and West Asia. So based on this, it has to improve its connectivity to the other world. That way he tried to expose its strategic location. So these are the importances of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, what is the role of the SCO? How it is becoming a grand force in the global politics? Try to have a focus on this. Coming to startups, we all know the startup policy is soon on lines. Let us see how the startup policy is going to come forward. In this context, the patent regime in India and lack of proper tax administration, and finally the financial structures or banking support towards the startups, these are the major challenges which has to be addressed. So in India, if you observe, many successful startups, they are establishing themselves in Singapore because of the favorable environment over there. So even Flipkart recently established itself in Singapore because it provides easy access them towards the angel investors. So it is the time India has to revisit its startup ecosystem with the rightful tax policies, patent regime, and also improving the company registration ecosystem. Now coming to the disease patterns, in India, the latest report says that the top killer is the cardiovascular diseases. That shows the rising of non-communicable diseases in India. So added to that, with regard to the neonates, no more the diarrhea is the largest killer. It is the low birth weight and also lack of the institutional care related factors. These are the greatest killers. It's a remarkable change. And arrest of it is a search of Principal Secretary to the Chief CM offices in New Delhi. So it has become a political, furious reactions between the Delhi and the central government. So let us see the corruption perspective to this particular case. Now we all know that in corruption, the Vineet Narayan case is landmark, which is related to the Jain Hawala case. In that, Supreme Court has said the CBI shall not be a caged parrot. Remember, this word caged parrot was used by the Supreme Court. And every attack need to have an element of surprise. Then only it can fight the politics, bureaucracy and criminal nexus. And added to that, the Supreme Court has struck down the Section 6 of the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. According to the Section 6, any of investigation or conduct of a raid on a government officer greater than or above the rank of joint secretary needs the respective government's permission, and it is no more excess. So the raids appears to be absolutely legal, but however, so how they are in the spirit of law, that's what we need to observe. So how they are going to affect our federation, this is what is the thing we need to see over here. So these are the important things today. Thank you very much and all the best.